Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be just playing Enter the Gungeon with just a background noise while trying to continue what I was talking about yesterday when I stopped because I was kind of tired. I can't remember how this stuff works. I can't remember if opening it is bad or not. And that was maybe not the right choice. I don't remember how this game works. Like, I don't remember any of the specifics of this game. But I mean, the fundamental, it's right click to reload, not spacebar. Dodging is spacebar, not, dodging is right click, not spacebar. And I'm used to spacebar to dodge from a different game, probably Tiny Rogues. And I messed up again, I'm gonna die, it doesn't really matter. But, okay, my audio is loud. Oh yeah, I'm gonna restart because that's how that works. It reduces items, so I'm not gonna mess with that. I'm just gonna ignore it. Just play it simple, play the most basic character, and then just have it happen in the background as I talk. So, I'm not gonna grab that. I don't know what that does. It might be the correct choice to grab that, I don't know. But I'm gonna continue talking about where I left off yesterday, talking about Coiling Dragon / Panlong, where I had talked very generally about how the story progressed from how it started to how it eventually, like, the main characters eventually left their plane to explore in greater dimensions. Like, that sort of marked, I felt, the biggest shift in the story. There were multiple shifts throughout the story. It was not a one and done, like, there's only two major arcs, there's a bunch of, like, general arcs. This is a point in the story at which the story changed a great deal from there because it was no longer bound to, like, a relatively structured world. It became much more open to, like, even more absurd adventures and the like. Oh yeah, you can drop stuff here to get stuff or whatever. I don't remember anything about this game. I probably should just restart, like start from 0 and work my way back. Because the game does not work it. But the story in Coiling Dragon changed a great deal at that point. And from then on it just, I mean, it's also, I think, the point where the story, to me, loses some of its relative focus. It was never super focused, but once they introduce other planes to explore, it's gonna have to move a lot quicker. I'm really frustrated by these controls. I need to swap to spacebar to roll instead of right click. Spacebar is use item. Okay, I could work with right click for use item and spacebar for dodge. I wonder if that's what it was by default and I just changed it forever ago. But, oh yeah, what is this? Okay, I must have talked to him, so I must not be able to get anything but the rainbow chest. So I guess I need to take the rainbow chest. But the story changes starting there, and then once the story has become what it did, it changed. So what I'm gonna try to talk about, I don't remember how this game works. That's a weird weapon. Those are good damage. Sure, I don't remember what this does. I think it's like the first shot does extra damage. Okay. Oh, it's okay. This is so slow. Increases damage dealt by the first bullet in a clip. One of a pair, and that's like you get both, and you get special Omega Bullet or something. Okay. But once the story leaves the plane, it changes a great deal. It is established. It's one sort of weak part is how it oh yeah, I remember this stuff. How once they leave their plane, relevant to establish, like, there's keys back here that I can unlock to get to a secret path, but I'm not gonna mess with that. Once they leave their plane, it is established that, or it's supposed to be established that they are now, when they were formerly the strongest people in their plane, they're now among the weakest. And like, but it doesn't do an excellent job of making the characters feel weak, which, like, that's my only issue with that, is the way it attempts to be like, oh, they're weak now, but it doesn't. There's few moments where there's a genuine feeling of threat. Okay, you can't roll through them. Can you roll through anything? Can you roll through them? No, you can't roll through anything. Good to know. Gotta relearn basics. Yeah, there are moments where technically they are under threat, but they're almost always resolved with minimal damage to the characters that matter, which is to say, the three main people. Like, there's collateral damage for other people, but there are moments of risk, but they don't have lasting impacts that I can recall. Yeah, go away. Oh, it's locked, so I can't trigger him to open and leave me nothing. But that's one of the issues with this phase of the story. At no phase in the story is there actually a feeling of threat, because it's the main character, and like, it's obvious that they're going to be fine in this type of story, because it is a story surrounding one person. It's not a story surrounding a collection of people, in which individuals can certainly die. Oh, I can press this, yeah. I have a lockpick. I don't remember these. Gatling Gull. But like, yes. Despite the fact that there's never really any proper threat, there's even less threat at this stage, despite the author trying to establish a new pecking order. What the? This room's so big. But yeah, the author tries to establish a new pecking order, but it doesn't really do much, because it doesn't take long before everything gets sort of solved pretty easily. And like, if I recall, so he starts this section of the story as just a demigod level individual, and it's like, oh, that's supposed to be the weakest group of people. There's trillions of them in this plane, so that he's a nobody. Except these type of stories often are. He is already like as strong as mediocre, or as, actually no, he's probably only as strong as weak people of the tier above, but there's very little threat. There are moments where it's like, oh no, something bad has happened and they might die, but because of the type of story, it's never a threat. So I just kind of wished, I think it might have been better if the author didn't even attempt to act as if there was meant to be a threat in this scenario. Okay, that explosion hit so far away. But yeah, that's sort of, this phase of the story is not my favorite. It has fun elements, like the story begins with, well, yeah, I don't get anything. I only get the rainbow chest because I guess I interacted with the wrong dude at the starting point, so it's gonna not be a good run because I don't know how to play this game. But the character, they start out just at, I think, basically a city. It's not a super special city. This is actually a good decent gun. I have no idea what this does. Like, as with many of these type stories, they start off at like just a city. It's meant as like a representative, normal city. Oh, blanks! I forgot all about them. I forgot all about that mechanic. Okay. I'm gonna lose, but like I don't really care that much. because I kind of expected to do poorly, considering this is not a super straightforward game, and I haven't played it in probably at least 3 years. It's not efficient to use ammo like this, I think, but I'm bad at the game. I'm not going to make it far enough that the waste of ammo is going to really matter. But yeah, so this phase of the story is that it starts off just, oh, they're here. I think they become, I think one of the first plot points is to journey to where they want to go. They end up becoming, working to, they fairly quickly work towards becoming like mercenaries, which is, in this, I mean, they're basically just an adventurer in a like crazy magic world. You know, it's a waste of time. So what? This would be the right click, right? Okay. But yeah, that's, oh, there's actually help in there. That's sort of what the tone of this phase is. They're finding a place in this new world where there's trillions and quadrillions and whatever absurdly large numbers that don't have any actual meaning. Is it an obscene number of people? Oh, rat key, because at some point this rat element was added to the game, and I think I played around the time that was released, but not much, and then I stopped. But I don't know if it's been added since then. I don't know if anything's been added since then. But that's so the story focuses on them establishing a place by becoming mercenaries. There's a test of initiation. People, you know, attempt to... wrong button. People attempt to, you know, kill them, but they get saved. And then eventually, they're a mercenary, they start taking jobs, traveling towards somewhere. Like, traveling the world to learn, explore, improve themselves. I think it was already established before they got there that, like, the Dragon Blood warriors are technically, at this stage, it's believed that, like, his clan is a descendant of one of the, like, bigger clans within the, like, this plane, this greater plane. And so they, like, he makes it his goal to travel to where, you know, their clan headquarters is, basically. And so as part of that, he starts... That's why I think that's specifically why he became a mercenary. Oh, this guy. And then his travel is, you know, obviously interrupted by a dozen different fights and encounters with people. And he achieves, along the way, he encounters a particularly lucky scenario. Can't remember if it's before or after he meets his primary clan. It doesn't actually stick well, that phase. Oh, this stuff. Yeah, that's... Oh yeah, there's a whole teleporter system. I forgot all about that too. Tab? Okay, do that. But he finds his clan, whether before or after that, he visits... Oh, so that's that guy whose helmet accidentally kicked down before. He visits... Oh, and then you can put a shield here or something and it does something. Okay. he visits when he has gone his way, or after he succeeded in traveling to these people. He then continues his explore. He manages to find. He visits a region. I believe it's just a region and not some separate plane, because like traveling between planes is, when it is relevant plot-wise, traveling between planes is expensive. Eventually it becomes literally inconsequential, so it's not really important, but at this stage it's that. This must be within the same plane, but just a specific region. There is a... I think it's like, it's magical amethyst. It is a magical amethyst geyser, which... Oh, this guy sells stuff. There's a magical amethyst geyser, which... Actually, can I do this? Because that junk knight, Sir Junkin, is pretty cool. Actually, I probably wouldn't be able to get it anyway. The amethyst geyser is in a magic mountain. I don't know what any of this does. Go with the... I don't want to mess with curses. But within the amethyst mountain, he eventually succeeds in... Like, within the amethyst mountain, he eventually meets a super... Okay, you can't roll through that, maybe? He eventually meets an individual, like a... It's a amethyst beast, okay, who is incredibly good with the earth magic stuff. I'm not paying enough attention. And this beast has a skill that the main character is then allowed to basically copy, and he gets a rock that lets him more effectively control gravity type idea, which, like, the specifics are not important. What's important is that this is an encounter that just seemingly, within following this timeline of the story and not knowing more about the future, seemingly this random creature who, I mean, they're all sentient as people. They're all just as sentient as people, so it doesn't really matter. But this creature decided, hey, let's just give this guy the ultimate strength boost for basically for free. I mean, they had to test him to get it, like, the test was not particularly dangerous, it just took time. And I mean, it's a story, it is, like, so, like, from a story perspective, it was just the way for the author to give the character a super power-up for free. Like, he didn't, like, he, you know, he learned when it was happening, but it didn't feel as though it was a justified gain of strength, in my opinion, but that's not important. It's not, these stories are very rarely good at justifying strength gain. But he gets his gain of strength, and it lets him become somewhat renowned as being stronger than he actually, as being like a higher tier individual than he actually is. And this leads to more conflict. People start to notice him. He has recognition. But eventually he, you know, the strength from that carries him a great deal. And oh, rats are relevant. The strength carries him a great deal, and then once that strength becomes insufficient, he coincidentally becomes the only person ever to, like, successfully, like, mutate his soul, use it when he has control over 4 different elemental bodies, which in story it's kind of unreasonable. Like, it's not really a huge issue because that's just sort of what the type of story it is, but it lets him become super strong and people think he's a paragon, which is actually a fun title within the story, because it's like anybody who manages to fuse every single mystery, which, like, each of the mysteries are separate, but it's challenging to fuse them together into one concept, because it's like every single elemental power that they work with has, you know, 8, 12, 14 mysteries. They have to learn enough to gain, like, a basic level of strength, but using them makes them more powerful because it's more accurate, sort of, to what it is, because the reality is that the mysteries are not separate. They're all a specific, like, way of looking at the element or whatever in question. And that's a fun concept, but then people, because the main character is super lucky, they fuse their soul and part of the fusing of the soul occurs because of the rock they got as part of their previous mega power-up, which is yet more stuff just works out. But that is, again, just what the name of the game is. But it all just sort of works out. He becomes a four-way soul mutate, I think is more or less the terminology. And I'm bad. And as part of that, people start to think that he is a paragon, and, like, he was waiting to become a high god until he succeeded in... he was fusing stuff along the way, because once they finish with fully learning a mystery, it becomes harder to fuse them because you have to work all the way back to the start to mix them together, because they all come from, like, the same root. I missed. I didn't push the button. This is a fun part of the game where it's like you get shot by time. Let's go to a different character. But yes, so that's he's thought of as a soul mutate, which is not the most important plot point, but it is relevant, but that's what happens. It's misunderstanding. But now he's got his new power-up, and he's I think it's pretty much... Oh, I need to turn this off. Oh, and this is the easily OP weapon. But he is, like, the strongest high god in existence at this point, I think. Or basically the strongest. He's top 5. Or no, he's either top... I give up. But anyway, this fusion of the different element is later revealed to be the only, like, it's basically, they're the only four, like, if he'd trained in anything else, he would have been doomed, he would have died, but because it was these 4 specific elements, which was just fire, water, I'm also totally tilted on this game, because I don't want to actually, you know, let's just return and try to figure out how to turn off the rainbows. Because I don't want the rainbows, I want actual, like, normal gameplay. I don't remember who Rainbow Guy is. It might be this dude. I'll just search the internet. I mean, it was the blue dude, so I probably have to find him and talk to him. This was Farewell to Arms, was when it was released, which was 2019. Side Dungeon, NPC Bowler. So I think I just need to find the bowler guy, who I think I saw hanging out on the chests. I don't think it might be in this one, but it's definitely not in the left one. Him. Give me back my single colored chest, please. Okay, good. Let's not mess with that anymore because I want to play the actual game. Because I don't know how to play this game. But what I was talking about was it established that it's the only permutation of multiple elements that would allow this, because it is established at the end that this universe was simply a universe made by another super powerful cultivator person from another universe, which then this main character eventually raises to that level and he becomes completely unbeatable because he's basically equal to the person who created his universe if given time, because he has to accrue like Greystone energy or some silly name. Like, he has to accrue energy and he would be just as strong, but then as part of that he also, it is just like the author has another book that they have written where it is established that this main character created his own world, and like this chain happens regularly. Like, it's not like people ascend beyond their universe eventually. Like, the main stuff that happens, like, that's established. Like, he's lucky he trained in the exact elements, which I remember I was trying to say which elements they were, which was water, fire, earth, air, like the basic elements. It's not totally an unreasonable selection of elements, but like, they're fairly common as the most important elements in the world type, so it's not a huge negative, but yeah, that's how the story is sort of how he gets his ultimate power up, and then once he reaches that level of strength, it doesn't become totally irrelevant, but it mostly, the rest of the story just sort of tells itself. Like, there's moments that, oh yeah, can't I fly? Yeah. There's moments that are somewhat relevant, like there's a whole quest that is given, and I think sovereigns take issue with him, but because for some reason a guy decided to do him the most huge favor in existence and just hand over a spark from a dead sovereign, which the sparks are the cores that are used, that are formed when people achieve a certain rank, but the sovereign sparks cannot be achieved because it's the ultimate rank and there can only be like X. Wait, what? Oh, I got hit so it broke. I forgot about that mechanic. That specific gun, if you get hit while holding it, it pops, which is a fun part about the game. I hate it a great deal because now I don't have that gun, but it's fun from a like flavor perspective. But yes, so he gets handed on a silver platter either 1 or 2 sparks to just become a sovereign, and then it's decided, hey, all your powers are imbalanced now because the soul mutate thing. The power is shared, but it's sort of it's a melding of all of them. But now that he has one sovereign tier energy source and 3 lower tier, it's not balanced anymore. Now he has to hunt sovereigns to get their sparks, because when you kill them you get the sparks, so it's easy. He kills a bunch. Once he finally succeeds in getting, I think this might just be worth shooting. Once he succeeds in getting the final sovereign level spark, he instantly ascends to uber godhood and just sort of wins. And it occurs as he's being chased by one of his ultimate nemesis. That's a terrible play. One of his ultimate nemesises, who like was which is, it's revealed there that, oh, he was partially responsible for his mother's death, which is also which in turn sort of means that he was partially responsible for his father's death, and everything all comes back to that, which I think is weird. It's kind of unnecessary. It's fine, but it's unnecessary. Yeah, it's revealed that, hey, they are this person was indirectly responsible for everything terrible that happened in your life when you were a child. Because at this stage, he's like trillions of years old or whatever, so he's not a child. But that's how that goes. The ending is fine. Like a lot of these types of stories, it ends with he's the most powerful man, he can never die, he'll live forever, and he can revive everyone he wants. So happy. It's a happy ending, technically, except it's only a happy ending if you don't care about stakes. But since he can revive everyone that died that he cared about, it doesn't matter. Like, nothing matters at that point. It's like, it loses meaning. I think this shoots something when you reload, right? No. Oh, it's random every time? No. I thought this was more interesting. Oh yeah, like curse or whatever. But... oh, like key mimic. Ammo mimic. Let's give this one because it's the one I'm actually shooting. But yes. Oh, it's actually good. Except again, it's a cursed weapon. You get 10 curse and you die or something? I can't remember. But yeah, the story just sort of ends with nothing matters the entire time. Because it all gets solved at the very end by random chance. But over time, I can't remember if it does. It's like a worse fight saber, where you can block bullets with it, but it doesn't do it as well. This was the enemy in that Tiny Rogues has kind of a slightly different clone of. Except it's way harder here because they actually aim at you, instead of just pulling straight back into the center. But I'm gonna die in this run anyway, but it's not a good gun. Maybe it is, but like it's not great. I guess it's gonna do way more damage. But that's how that story, like, I skipped over a ton of stuff. Like, there's elements that are brought up, but don't really have a great deal of impact on the story. Like, there's a ton of... oh shoot, I don't know how to play this game. But like the Panlong just kind of has, I think, a fairly weak ending. It's kind of a satisfying ending because, oh, he's now the ultimate being in the universe, basically, but the fact that there's no stakes to the story, kind of, who cares? So I can talk a bit about Desolate Era, which in my opinion, as in the same sort of genre, I think it's overall better. Because, like, it has the same general, oh, he started from humble beginnings, he becomes the strongest being in the universe. So his final ending is the tiniest bit more interesting, because while he is the strongest being in the universe, there's another universe with its own strongest being in that universe who has a home turf advantage, so they can't really fight each other. But if one tried to fight the other, they would be relatively evenly matched. And like, that's interesting enough. Oh, is that getting through it without getting hit gives you master rounds? Because I don't know if I got hit for damage that boss fight. Oh, these side boss fights, I'm gonna die. Damn, garbage at the game. But yes, that's sort of how. So Desolate Era has a sort of a similar ending where he becomes the strongest being in the universe, which is like kind of lame, but not really important because that's just sort of that's the gist of these types of stories. Always, they become the strongest person in existence. Almost always. Well, this is fun. But this one had a little bit more focus, I think, like, because more or less the character followed one path their whole life. They became exceptional at that one path. They had other paths that they worked on, which eventually become more relevant, but I find it much more appealing, and it's easier for the author to not just sort of leave stuff hanging if the main character is just focused on, in this case, swords, and while he does, you know, master water, and I mean eventually he masters everything basically, but for a while his emphasis is swords and water. But oh, I should have. Oh well. But that's. Oh, actually, that's a secret room. Which, if I don't know if this is how it works. Yes. Yes, he becomes master, but because he focuses, the character is primarily centered around swords. There's much less. What's the point of this? What is the point of this? Maybe because of the focus on swords, his strength can be increased in a manner which is a little bit less swingy, because in Coiling Dragon, the character basically, he becomes better at, like, there's large sections where there's one that is his forte, but if I recall correctly, it's very frequent that one of his elements is pushed forwards. That's his best element for a while, and then another has a breakthrough that pushes it above that, and so it swings between them, because it would be, realistically, it would be difficult to keep everything at the same level of power, because to an extent the power growth is luck. Like, it's understanding of the universe, but it's sort of established that a lot of that is based on, you know, the experiences that the character has. So if they don't experience something that helps them grow in a specific way, then they don't grow in that way. It's like, it's reasonable that it would not, they don't grow at the same rate. I'm gonna die because of garbage game. But the advantage that Desolate Era has from a power from a power management perspective is that having one primary, like, point of strength that, like, isn't completely solitary, but it is the main emphasis for their competency, means that they don't need to have the character jump around a ton, and, like, they improve their other stuff, but it's never a case of, oh, he's the best at this now, and then now he's best at this. Past a certain point in the story, he is always best at swords. Which, like, being best at swords is weird, sort of, but it's a common enough premise because it's like the Tao of the sword. And, like, it's whatever, but that's sort of how that is in this story. And I find that the way that it is told overall, with minimal emphasis on, like, keeping everything balanced, helps keep it interesting, less hand-wavy, oh, this is how he's gonna get this one stronger now. But that's just sort of basic power level in the story, how it progresses. What the? I'm gonna die because I'm tilted, because what? That's not tilted, I'm just confused. Okay, those explode. I'm gonna die. Coming bad. This game is way too complicated to me. I'm bad at the game. Let's switch to a different character. Yeah, the game makes progress. But Desolate Era, I'm gonna talk a bit about the overall arc. I'm gonna try to keep myself from going into excessive, what's with that? I'm gonna try to keep myself from going into excessive, I guess it's like if you button mash this particular gun, it's like slightly faster. Maybe not, it could just be a image based, like a thought, but yeah, that's Desolate Era. I'm gonna try to talk about the general plot progression, but without going into excessive detail, because then it will result in how I was talking about Panlong, where I started with a fair bit of detail, and then just sort of started skimming through any story. So I'm gonna try not to do that, and just stick with the flow. And so if I want to do that, I will have to start sort of at the beginning, and then try to, in the next 20-ish minutes, get to the end without overstaying on any topic. So the story, let's start with, the story begins as a fairly normal, like, he's a member of a clan, so I think it's a clan and not a school, so it's family based as opposed to just anyone can join. He's part of a clan. His father was formerly one of the strongest people. He is, I don't know, I think it's established that it is interpreted that he is weaker. This is not a key plot point long term, so I'm gonna move on from that. But he begins in a clan. He has to make a place for himself because he is treated as lesser to an extent. Not much though, they don't really emphasize that much. But he's treated as lesser for like all of half a book. And then he improves, he reaches the point where he can explore the world a bit by himself. While exploring, he eventually meets an animal companion type. He might have already had one by then, but it's frankly not an important plot. Like, honestly, I don't think he has an animal companion that matters long term. But he finds a snake, he fights the snake, he beats the snake, he saves the snake, they become his animal companion, who barely matters, like, he's not very important. No, he definitely has another animal companion character. I can't remember who they are. They're completely forgettable. But he does the common, save an animal, get an animal companion. The animal companion is in some specific way uber strong, which this is like they can teleport, find treasure, which kind of matters plot-wise, but it's not hugely important. Then he's improved himself. He returns home, as it happens in these sorts of clan stories. The clan is fighting another group. I think in this case it was a school. Let's just do this. And fighting the school then becomes a primary plot line for a few books, or maybe even just a few chapters. I'm bad. And like, he gets better. They eventually win, sort of, like he manages to force them to sort of leave them alone for a while. at some point along those lines, he, you know, joins a school. Every story like this, the character is either 100% a lone wolf or at some point joins a school. Not necessarily like clan type magic school, but like he joins a school. The school kind of matters plot-wise, but he's not that important. But after joining a school, he gets stronger. He technically meets two girls, but at this stage you only really meet one. They sort of date because this is meant to serve as a lame-ish, oh, he gets with the more popular acting one, but then that doesn't work out because she's shallow or whatever. So it's actually because she's controlling, but like the character he then ends up with is more demure, personally capable type of person. And like, it's not terrible, but it's not a great love story. Obviously it's not going to be very good, but there's worse in this type of book. But that sort of, the eventual wife character matters because in this first arc of the story, they're combating, well actually, there's like multiple elements to this first arc. In the very first arc, he's limited to his planet. And there are a few enemies during the first arc, but none of them are overarching enemies to the entire arc. Like, it's meaningful, but it's not important. Like, it's just story enemies. Eventually, once that phase of the story is complete, is this like, okay, it is. Yeah, open that. But once this phase of the story is complete and he leaves this world to train with a new master, it then opens the next storyline, which plenty of it is forgettable to me, but I think I think there are plot elements throughout, but the only thing that really sticks is sort of how it all ends. Like, this is like, the story now takes place on a much grander scale, with his world being sort of a minor component of the story, still relevant, but not the most important. I think most of this plot, he personally is on his world taking care of issues for a long time, but he also explores a few like other regions in the greater universe, which eventually leads to him, like, all of this eventually leads to a big reveal of their world is emerging. Well, it's like Chaos World is like the term. Their Chaos World is emerging of two worlds that like collided. And so there was a fight in the distant past. Oh god, I hate that. In this fight, technically the side which currently occupies the world clearly occupies the world we're the victors. But eventually, you know, the ones who lost, fight back. And that becomes like a major point in a war that occurs at the end of this overarching plotline. This war has multiple important plot points. It results in his wife's death, but I mean, in this type of story it's never totally permanent, but in this particular story it was mostly permanent. Like, they eventually get revived, but that's like end of story revival, not mid-story revival. Yes, they're eventually revived, but the wife dies because she was a traitor to the current controllers of this universe. And so she died, but not for the same, like, it wasn't killed as punishment, it was killed because as she was backstabbing them, she died. And then the villains took her soul and doomed it to eternal punishment or something. But that then doesn't matter. Another big bad is revealed who was manipulating everyone the whole time. He comes from a totally separate Chaos world. They managed to band together to beat him, which is like, put aside your differences, they become friends, and like plot-wise, everything in this world is happy. There are no villains, nobody matters in the story anymore. Nobody from there really matters again in the story. And the main character is like, oh, I'm the best here, gotta go somewhere else to improve. And no, it's also that they got a sword from someone who, I can't remember if it was a sword, I think it was a sword. They got some sort of power, strength, from someone who is from another Chaos world, or there's another term, but from a different reality, basically. And this person bound them to make an attempt to return to their sect in the outer world area within like 1 or 100 chaos cycles. And this is sort of where time loses all meaning, because like a chaos cycle is the amount of time it takes for one of the chaos worlds, which is like where he grew up and just left after a big war. That's the amount of time it takes for a chaos world to naturally break. Like, it falls apart after one chaos cycle, which is kind of fun. But from here on out, like, time starts being measured in hundreds or thousands of chaos cycles. So like, it doesn't, I don't think it really works, but it's whatever. He succeeds in finding the sect. It takes a bit of fight along the way, but he makes it fine with plenty of time to spare. He joins the sect because he's introduced by his dead former master. And so he joins that sect. He helps them, I think, defend themselves a little bit. But following that, he... Ooh, fun. Oh, I can go there. Following this all... hold, sir. But he eventually, after a certain point, I cannot for the life of me recall how long it took in world. I want this to shoot those. Got hit, kind of bad. But he eventually makes... There's other enemies to this particular sect that don't matter for a while. At this stage, most of them have not been met yet. He wins a fight, he joins the sect, he eventually sort of leaves the sect because he has to go exploring and whatever. But then, as he is exploring, increased damage at cost of velocity. He's exploring. From here it becomes a little more vague in my memory, because it's just, there's these types of stories, for me, there's always a certain point where it isn't a drag to read, but also it doesn't matter at all on a broader scale. Like, for a while here, he does some stuff. He eventually gets kidnapped by basically a space whale, like a magic space whale that is like a master of the Tao of space. Which is not why he's a space whale. I just picture him as a space whale. He might not even be a whale. But like, he eats people, swallows them up, kidnaps them, and they then join his sect, which is in a non which is a neutral sect, except for certain people that they hate. Which, I mean, the conflict there doesn't really last. Like, any conflict related, it doesn't really have lasting interest. Like, it matters in the story as it goes. Like, none of it stuck around in my head. Whereas there are plenty of books that I've read where these sorts of conflicts feel like they matter. In the story, it's like, even in the story, these conflicts never... these conflicts only ever matter as a means for conflict. Like, there's no... Like, there might be attempts to make it sympathetic in one side or another, but at least to me it never succeeds in drawing any, like, oh, these are good people. It's mostly like, oh, these are the people that the friends of the main character are enemies. Like, these are the people who are the enemies of the people who are friends with the main characters, so they're bad. Like, that's about as far as that sort of any opinion about these groups go. Because it's just, again, it's always the nature of the story. It's never great, but it's always fun enough. Why am I only getting guns? Can you only get guns from these? Like, I thought you could get other, like, stuff from chests than just guns. Okay, I should have dodged them bad. But yes, that's how the story goes. There's fights throughout that don't really feel like they matter that much. He gets various points that gives him strength upgrades. And he grows. This stuff's funny. But this then in turn leads to the reveal of the true big bads of the story, who are the big bads on this, like, planar universal level. That's like, oh, these are the bad people, they've invaded, they have a fundamentally different way of doing everything. They don't belong here, they're alien. And, like, if that's some sort of meant as a reference to reality, it's pretty weird. Like, if you take it as that, maybe. I don't know. But if the author mentions that, I think they're kind of crazy, because it's not at all... it's a weird take if it was. So I assume it's not something like that, but it could be. Yeah, the aliens are bad, and exact same as the first arc. It's like, oh, in the distant past we fought and we won, and then we confined them to a specific area so that they couldn't, you know, kill us. And then it ends in a fight and the good guys win. Like, that's sort of, it's the same overall plot twice. It's a little bit different, because this actually, I mean, you know the main character's gonna win in the end. There is actually a moment of, hey, stuff went bad here. Like, he managed to, like, achieve general, that's just faster swapping or something. He grew, he improved, he became the best. But he actually, like, again, you don't expect him to die, but he gets close to it, and it at least feels pretty good how the author handles his almost failing. Like, it's like, in the darkest moment he has an epiphany and that saves him. Like, it's not the best, but it's more interesting than I would honestly expect from most of these types of stories. So I think it's pretty good. But yes, the new big bad is revealed. It's the same. The new big bad, same as the old big bad. It's like that's one sort of negative. If you go through it again and think about that, it's like the final enemy is no different than like the first big main bad enemy, which is kind of lame. These bullets are weird. This is super annoying. Okay, is this ammo efficient? It is ammo efficient. The quick draw gives me an extra shot. If I want to be ammo efficient, I just shoot, reload, shoot, reload, shoot, reload. But yeah, it's kind of weird that that's how the story sort of works in, but he becomes the best at swords. He merges his Tao of the sword with every other Tao in existence in their world, and this allows him to like transcend the limits of this plane, which then lets him meet the like boss of the people invading his world, because it's sort of established that each universe, overall world, can only have one ruler at a given time. And so anyone from that previous world that wanted to like reach that level of strength has to take over a different world. And they almost succeeded because they had the advantage of one thing that is, sorry, this is like bad speech, but one thing that is established is that, yeah, it's a lot easier to, you know, learn, improve if you have someone to teach you. And since this other world managed to have, you know, someone reach that super tier already and has a path to reach that, like their personal path can then be followed to some extent by everyone following. So they have a much greater number of, you know, stronger individuals. And that's the fun part of it, that it emphasizes that while people can get to the pinnacle of strength by themselves, it's much easier if you have a guide to follow. It's fun. It's not often... I mean, the main character got to the end by themselves, because that's how the characters always do it. But at least it is clearly established that in this world... Oh, I hate the Grim Reaper element of this game. Oh wait, no, it's when you get past a certain level of curse, a Grim Reaper follows you forever. And they're very dangerous. But yes, like establishing that having someone to copy is gonna be better, not copy, but like follow is better, is great, because almost every one of these stories, I mean, including this one, the main character carves their own path to become the strongest. And they rarely make mistakes that can't be saved, but they always run across individuals who made mistakes that cannot be fixed. Which I think is like, it's kind of... I mean, it wouldn't work for these stories if they made mistakes that would prevent them from becoming the strongest, because these stories are always the goal of the character is to become the strongest in existence. But I think there are some that stop a little short of that, but that's always the goal. But it's necessary that the character doesn't make these mistakes. But noting that even indirectly is appealing. And so yeah, that's where sort of the story of that book. That was very rambly. I recognize that I did not do a good job of staying on topic or keeping a coherent line of thinking. But that's where I am going to stop for today. Apologies to anyone who might have, for whatever reason, watched this. And if they chose to watch this, they actually cared about these weird books. But I'm bad at covering topics like that. But yeah, I think I'm stopping here. It's been about an hour. I might try to go longer eventually, but at this point, my throat becomes sore very quickly. Especially since I did stuff earlier today talking a bunch. Yeah, that's where I'm stopping for today. I might not play Gungeon next time. I might go with Gunfire Reborn. So that might be even more involved than this, but I've at least played it semi-recently. But yeah, that's where I'm stopping. Who happens to have actually watched this, have a nice day.